Hello, and welcome back to the channel, Fight Fans. From claiming that bare-knuckle fighting is never boring to his obvious advantage in the league given his superior skills and size, Conor McGregor has revealed his plans to fight in the BKFC. And before you start asking why, a lot of it has to do with how bare-knuckle fighting is never boring. Everyone knows that McGregor's always looking to have some fun, so it's not really a surprise that bare-knuckle fighting came under his radar. The UFC great was talking about the different styles of fighting in one of his daily Instagram rants, and apparently he wants to become a slicey bear paw if he becomes a bare-knuckle boxer. More importantly though, the thing that interests McGregor is how there are no boring fights in the championship. And when he went into detail with Ariel Helwani discussing his appearance at BKFC 41, the former UFC double champ said he'd definitely take a bare-knuckle fight. Of course, the fact that he's still under contract with the UFC does make this kinda hard. So for the time being, just consider this another item on the long list of McGregor's future endeavors. Conor went on about his newfound likeness for the sport, saying that no other discipline or sport in the world can say that there's a 0% chance for their product to be boring. BKFC is the only promotion where you can take a fight, and no matter who you're up against, it's going to be a fun one. Unlike boxing or MMA. But him saying this shouldn't really come as a surprise. I mean, the Notorious is famous for his, notorious takes. Went on about how both boxing and MMA can be snooze fest. But even the simplest back and forth jab contest in bare knuckle fighting would have the crowd on their feet. That's because any jab has the ability to split the skin and cause some serious damage, which is what people pay big bucks to see, right? According to Conor anyway. See, McGregor believes that this split skin causes hell of a panic inside the ring, which keeps fans engaged and the fight's action-packed. He even called the sport interesting and how we jump at the chance of fighting in it. Because in McGregor's words, why not? The fact that he called boxing and the MMA a snooze fest didn't go down well with the fans either. You know how sensitive boxing fans can be? They see themselves as the purists of combat sports. And Conor's comments didn't sit well with them. And let me tell you, initiatives like the BKFC are only fueling the fire. They're making MMA fans look down upon other combat sports as well. But it wasn't only the fans. Conor's comments ended up wreaking a lot more havoc. Turns out, they also pissed off people in the UFC quarters. In case you've been living under a rock, the Irishman hasn't taken an official fight since 2021, when he broke his leg against Dustin Poirier at UFC 264. So in 2 years of his absence, you'd think the UFC would have moved on to bigger names, right? Wrong! He's still the biggest name in the promotion, and given how many new pairs of eyes he's brought to the UFC over the years, it's not exactly a surprise that they think of him as their biggest star. So, when UFC's main man is flirting with other combat promotions and slinging their championship belts on his shoulder, it sends a shiver or two down Uncle Dana's back. I mean, he can act cool all he wants, but it's clear as day that he'd much rather get McGregor fighting in the octagon. Credit to the UFC boss for keeping his cool though, and saying that his star just got caught up in the moment, while adding that he was actually called into the ring rather than something he'd do on his own. Yeah, sweep it under the rug all you want, Dana, but there are significant other issues when it comes to McGregor, and the UFC knows it. Ever since Mystic Mac declared himself fit, the promotion's been dealing with a new set of problems, like getting him to fight. Gone are the days when fighters would step into the octagon as soon as they'd recover. Now you've got a million other things to look out for, like when McGregor should fight or who he should fight. This right now is the biggest question for the UFC, especially when you factor in what Conor has been up to in the past couple of years. The promotion knows this is their last chance of getting something out of him. So it's not a surprise that they're only looking for blockbuster fights from here on out, because any of these fights could be the last we see of the Notorious in the UFC. BKFC, boxing, Hollywood, McGregor has a hard time saying no to anything basically, and as long as he's the center of attention, he's going to milk it as much as possible. The UFC knows that he runs on adrenaline, entertainment, and excitement, so if they can find the perfect fight, they could turn his head and get a couple of other fights scheduled. As it stands, a fight against Poirier seems like a distant dream, but many others have called out McGregor, and he said yes to just about everyone. Like I said, the man can't say no to save his life. Ultimately, his participation in The Ultimate Fighter opposite Michael Chandler has given everyone hope that we could see those two legends get into the octagon. Again, it's not going to be straightforward. There's also trouble over the mandatory drug testing. To understand this problem, you need a little bit of context. Before he got injured, McGregor was in phenomenal shape and was looking better than most other guys. Since his return from injury, though, he's gotten even bigger, and people are having a hard time believing that he gained all that muscle organically. Things got so heated that the USADA had to be called into action. But it's not only because of the muscle he's gained. There's a regulation in the MMA world now that every fighter, before their match, has to be in the USADA drug testing pool for 6 months before he can fight. McGregor expected Dana White and the UFC to make an exception for him, but the last time Uncle Dana allowed someone to fight without entering the drug testing pool ended up being a PR disaster for him. Yeah, I don't need to remind you what happened with Brock Lesnar and his failed drug test after the fight, right? That's why, to avoid any new troubles, White hasn't gotten involved in all this, and it looks like McGregor will need to play by the rules for once in his life. At the same time, though, he's known for being mercurial. You can never predict what he does next, and it wouldn't be a surprise if he loses patience and does do something stupid. By stupid, I mean he could leave the promotion and turn his attention to one of the many other things he wants to try. He could be tempted by a big money fight in the boxing world, and there are a couple of YouTubers who'd be more than willing to make it happen. There's also a problem when it comes to which weight class McGregor will fight at in the UFC, because he has gained a lot of muscle, and analysts simply don't see him making the weight for lightweight anymore. Of course, for White, this causes more headache, because finding the right opponent for his superstar is hard enough. Unfortunately, given how things are panning out, it wouldn't be out of the blue if the Notorious turned his attention to the BKFC once and for all. Think about it, he's perfectly cut out for the world of bare-knuckle boxing, and you can't tell me differently. He'll have a lot of advantages should he make the switch, and McGregor will instantly become the biggest name in that promotion too. He can also strike a big money deal with the BKFC officials, who'd be open to whatever the Irishman is after. More than just money and stardom, though, this is something that'll suit the way he fights. At the end of the day, McGregor's a very decent boxer. He may have come up short against Floyd Mayweather, but the money is the greatest boxer of our generation, and with little to no experience, the Notorious put up a real fight. This advantage in terms of boxing and a newfound edge due to his massive size is going to make Conor the favorite in any BKFC fight he takes. Also, his last few adventures in the UFC haven't gone to plan, having lost 3 of his last 4 fights, and the only win coming against the washed Donald Cerrone back in 2020. It also allows him to improve his boxing, which can be a gateway to the actual world of boxing, where there's so much more money to be made. So from his obvious advantage in the league, given his superior skills and size, to claiming that bare-knuckle boxing is never boring, this was all on Conor McGregor's plans to fight in BKFC.